what a start. Inside out and upside down. No stress, I'ma clean up this mess.
Hi, it's Leigh here. How you going? Thanks for joining me today. So what I'm doing today is another one of Susan and Sheree's awesome collaborations. So for April, it's called Stencil With Us. So our co-hosts are Susan from Susan Hiles Art and Sheree from Turquoise Dreaming. If you would like to participate, just follow the steps that you can see on the bottom of the page here. So post a video on YouTube or share an Instagram post. Link Sheree and Susan's channels in your description box. Be subscribed to both Sheree and Susan's channels. Let one of them know so they can link you in their description box, and make sure that you use the hashtag Stencil With Us in your title. So I made 4 journaling cards, and I started off with a piece of watercolor paper, so it's 200 GSM, and I had only been using that just to roll off my brayer when I was doing some gel plate printing. I then splashed some inks around on it, and then I applied my stencils with gesso and other inks. So here I am trying to decide what stencils I want to use. I pull a whole heap out but only use a few of them. So I finally decide which ones I want to use, and I want to give this one a try because it's a new one. I thought the best way to apply it, because the holes are so big, is with a sponge. So I get a sponge out and I'm using gesso to put down the pattern. I really love the way that looks. The design of that stencil is actually called Giraffe, and when I first saw it I thought, why? And yeah, you sort of can see giraffe pattern in there. So I've covered the whole piece of paper with that. Now I'm putting some of these geometric arrows and things down the side. So I do that on both sides. Decide the easiest way, instead of dabbing it in, is to actually just run the sponge up the stencil. I'm now going to apply some of this lettering with a makeup sponge and walnut stain, but because I've used the sponge for other things, the walnut stain's sort of looking a bit greenish. And when I think I've got enough letters on there, I put it aside and let it dry for a while. And when it's dry, I cut it up into 8 different pieces. So I'm going to just decorate 4 of those cards and show you how they turned out. And I've still got the other 4 up my sleeve for some other project. Here's my 4 cards. So I did cut it into various sizes because I like to have, well, I actually like the longer cards, but I ended up with some long and some short. But yeah, and I like my corners rounded on my journal cards because if they're going inside a pocket, they're easier to get in and out of the pocket, or get into the pocket I should say, when the corners are round, because the point doesn't catch. After I do all the corners, I use my little slot punch to put a hole in the top, because I'm going to put a bit of ribbon on each one. And I find I like to have the hole there in the first place, in case because if I decorate it and there's fabric there, I can't get a hole through. Or I can, but it's more difficult. So I find it easier just to put the hole in the first place and work around it. Okay, so they're ready to be decorated now. I do like to sew around my cards, so I took them off to the sewing machine and roughly sewed around the outside in a creamy sort of colour. And now I'm going to start decorating them. So I've gone through my pile of stencils and I'm looking for something to put onto the cards. I want to get some more lettering onto the cards, and I use the same makeup sponge but with the black soot ink this time. I decide that I don't like the way it looks because it's got other colours on it, and change to this makeup brush which isn't as contaminated with other colours, and there's a big difference. You can see it's much darker. So I was happy with that, and I just put a few letters on each one of them. This one, and placed the stencil over the original letters and went over it again with the makeup brush in the black. So I was happy with that then. I wasn't trying to make any words or anything, I was just whatever came off the stencil was what I was happy with. So here they are lined up, ready for the next step. And I have my honeycomb stencil. And I think, well, if it's honeycomb, it's got to be yellowish, orangey maybe. So I go and get my 2 yellow and orange ink pads. So my intention is to use the 2 different colours, but one on 2 of the cards and one on the other. But in the end, I only end up using the rusty hinge. I can't make up my mind, as you can see. I don't want to cover the card in the honeycomb stencil, I just want some of it to be on there. The colour does change a bit because it absorbs some of the other inks and ends up a sort of a browny colour, I guess it is, when the time it's finished. And I didn't want to put the patterning in the same place on everyone, so I was moving around with them. This one I thought I will put some texture paste or gesso, I can't remember what that is. Oh, it's gesso. Just down the side there, just a bit of added interest. I have to use the stencil brush on this particular one because the holes are really small. I was a little bit disappointed by the way this looked. It wasn't really that effective. So I ditched that stencil and grabbed my raindrops stencil instead, and put some gesso raindrops onto this card. That's better. Happy with that. I get the other card and put a few on that as well. Clean up the mess again. So now I'm inking around the outside edge of the card with walnut stain. And adding a few splashes of coffee on there as well. Have you ever wondered what colour a unicorn's hair is? Well, That's the name of this paint that I'm using at the moment. It's a goldy sort of metallic, and it's called Unicorn Hair. So I'm just adding a little bit to each card with my finger because I like shiny things. I want to put a little bit of a collage on each of the cards. So I've got a selection of butterflies that I've fussy cut and some scraps of wallpaper. I've got some ribbon and fabric scraps as well, and I'll compose a little collage for each one. I'm trying to work out how to put these together. Ink around the butterflies and audition different pieces on different cards with little scraps of lace and things. Some of the butterflies I thought were too big when I was doing it, but watching it back in replay, I think, well, they weren't that bad. I probably could have used them. And I have some labels that I do end up using a couple of as a base for the little clustery collage. I just can't make up my mind. There's a lot of procrastinating going on here. But they all would have looked okay had I just done it instead of fiddling around, changing my mind about things. Because when you come back and look at what you discarded, what you didn't want to use, when you see that played back on the video, it's like, oh, well, that looked alright, but why didn't it look that way when I was actually doing it? It wasn't good enough, sort of thing. Anyhow, I think I've almost worked out how I'm going to do these, so just a little bit more fiddly diddling around. Eventually I will pick up the glue and start putting things down. I also, on those labels, I used my little stamp, date stamp. Just made up a date. Finally, I've picked up my glue and I'm going to stick everything down. So I'm using my Tombow glue because it's a bit better than glue stick when it comes to sticking down bits of fabric. After everything was glued down, I decided to splatter some white ink on there. And for that card, because it's got a purple butterfly, an off-cut of purple fabric and ribbon for that one, and just putting some more ink onto the others. I scrounged around in a little scrap box fabrics and tried to, match the fabric to the card to a certain extent. I used a fine tip marker to put some antenna on the butterflies. I later on went over that with a different marker because it didn't really work, didn't stand out. So yeah, now I'm just spreading a bit of that gold ink and white ink along the sides of the card just to use it up. So here's my 4 finished cards. Quite happy with them. We've got lots of details on them, stitching and inking and collage and a little bit of texture, ribbons. So I highly recommend that you check out Sheree and Susan's channel and that you look at the other creations from everybody else who's taking part in this collaboration, and give them a thumbs up, leave them a comment, subscribe to their channel if you aren't already subscribed to them. Give them a bit of encouragement because we all love to receive that. And I want to thank you for spending some time with me today, and we'll wish you all the best. So remember, creativity is contagious. Pass it on. Be kinder than you need to be. And I'll see you in the next video. So I will say bye for now. So cheers from Australia. Hooroo.